Chapter 5. They all separated, but, except Anatole who fell asleep as soon as he got into bed, all kept awake a long time that night. Is he really to be my husband, this stranger who is so kind? Yes, kind, that is the chief thing, thought Princess Mary, and fear, which she had seldom experienced, came upon her. She feared to look round. It seemed to her that someone was there standing behind the screen in the dark corner. And this someone was he, the devil, and he was also this man with the white forehead, black eyebrows, and red lips. She rang for her maid and asked her to sleep in her room. Mademoiselle Bourrienne walked up and down the conservatory for a long time that evening, vainly expecting someone, now smiling at someone, now working herself up to tears with the imaginary words of her pauvre mère rebuking her for her fall. The little princess grumbled to her maid that her bed was badly made. She could not lie either on her face or on her side. Every position was awkward and uncomfortable, and her burden oppressed her now more than ever because Anatole's presence had vividly recalled to her the time when she was not like that and when everything was light and gay. She sat in an armchair in her dressing jacket and nightcap, and Katy, sleepy and disheveled, beat and turned the heavy feather bed for the third time, muttering to herself. "I told you it was all lumps and holes," the little princess repeated. "I should be glad enough to fall asleep, so it's not my fault," and her voice quivered like that of a child about to cry. The old prince did not sleep either. Tikhon, half asleep, heard him pacing angrily about and snorting. The old prince felt as though he had been insulted through his daughter. The insult was the more pointed because it concerned not himself but another, his daughter, whom he loved more than himself. He kept telling himself that he would consider the whole matter and decide what was right and how he should act, but instead of that he only excited himself more and more. The first man that turns up, she forgets her father and everything else, runs upstairs and does up her hair and wags her tail and is unlike herself. Glad to throw her father over. And she knew I should notice it. Fr. 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 And don't I see that that idiot had eyes only for Bourrienne? I shall have to get rid of her. And how is it she has not pride enough to see it? If she has no pride for herself she might at least have some for my sake. She must be shown that the blockhead thinks nothing of her and looks only at Bourrienne. No, she has no pride, but I'll let her see. The old prince knew that if he told his daughter she was making a mistake and that Anatole meant to flirt with Mademoiselle Bourrienne, Princess Mary's self-esteem would be wounded and his point, not to be parted from her, would be gained, so pacifying himself with this thought, he called Tikhon and began to undress. What devil brought them here, thought he, while Tikhon was putting the nightshirt over his dried-up old body and grey-haired chest. I never invited them. They came to disturb my life, and there is not much of it left. Devil take them, he muttered, while his head was still covered by the shirt. Tikhon knew his master's habit of sometimes thinking aloud, and therefore met with unaltered looks the angrily inquisitive expression of the face that emerged from the shirt. "Gone to bed?" asked the prince. Tikhon, like all good valets, instinctively knew the direction of his master's thoughts. He guessed that the question referred to Prince Vasily and his son. "They have gone to bed and put out their lights, your excellency." "No good, no good," said the prince rapidly, and thrusting his feet into his slippers and his arms into the sleeves of his dressing gown, he went to the couch on which he slept. Though no words had passed between Anatole and Mademoiselle Bourrienne, they quite understood one another as to the first part of their romance. Up to the appearance of the pauvre mère, they understood that they had much to say to one another in private, and so they had been seeking an opportunity since morning to meet one another alone. When Princess Mary went to her father's room at the usual hour, Mademoiselle Bourrienne and Anatole met in the conservatory. Princess Mary went to the door of the study with special trepidation. It seemed to her that not only did everybody know that her fate would be decided that day, but that they also knew what she thought about it. She read this in Tikhon's face and in that of Prince Vasily's valet, who made her a low bow when she met him in the corridor carrying hot water. The old prince was very affectionate and careful in his treatment of his daughter that morning. Princess Mary well knew this painstaking expression of her father's. His face wore that expression when his dry hands clenched with vexation at her not understanding a sum in arithmetic, when rising from his chair he would walk away from her, repeating in a low voice the same words several times over. He came to the point at once, treating her ceremoniously. "I have had a proposition made me concerning you," he said with an unnatural smile. "I expect you have guessed that Prince Vasily has not come and brought his pupil with him." For some reason Prince Bolkonsky referred to Anatole as a pupil, "for the sake of my beautiful eyes. Last night a proposition was made me on your account and, as you know my principles, I refer it to you." "How am I to understand you, mon père?" said the princess, growing pale and then blushing. "How understand me?" cried her father angrily. "Prince Vasily finds you to his taste as a daughter-in-law and makes a proposal to you on his pupil's behalf. That's how it's to be understood. How understand it? And I ask you." "I do not know what you think, father," whispered the princess. I. What of me? Leave me out of the question. I'm not going to get married. What about you? That's what I want to know." The princess saw that her father regarded the matter with disapproval, but at that moment the thought occurred to her that her fate would be decided now or never. She lowered her eyes so as not to see the gaze under which she felt that she could not think, but would only be able to submit from habit, and she said, "I wish only to do your will," but if I had to express my own desire. She had no time to finish. The old prince interrupted her. "That's admirable," he shouted. "He will take you with your dowry and take Mademoiselle Bourienne into the bargain. She'll be the wife, while you—" The prince stopped. He saw the effect these words had produced on his daughter. She lowered her head and was ready to burst into tears. Now then, I'm only joking," he said. "Remember this, princess, I hold to the principle that a maiden has a full right to choose. I give you freedom. Only remember that your life's happiness depends on your decision. Never mind me." "But I do not know, father." "There's no need to talk. He receives his orders and will marry you or anybody, but you are free to choose. Go to your room, think it over, and come back in an hour and tell me in his presence, yes or no. I know you will pray over it. Well, pray if you like, but you had better think it over. Go. Yes or no, yes or no, yes or no," he still shouted when the princess, as if lost in a fog, had already staggered out of the study. Her fate was decided and happily decided. But what her father had said about Mademoiselle Bourienne was dreadful. It was untrue to be sure, but still it was terrible, and she could not help thinking of it. She was going straight on through the conservatory, neither seeing nor hearing anything, when suddenly the well-known whispering of Mademoiselle Bourienne aroused her. She raised her eyes, and 2 steps away saw Anatole embracing the Frenchwoman and whispering something to her. With a horrified expression on his handsome face, Anatole looked at Princess Mary, but did not at once take his arm from the waist of Mademoiselle Bourienne who had not yet seen her. "Who's that? Why? Wait a moment." Anatole's face seemed to say. Princess Mary looked at them in silence. She could not understand it. At last Mademoiselle Bourienne gave a scream and ran away. Anatole bowed to Princess Mary with a gay smile, as if inviting her to join in a laugh at this strange incident, and then shrugging his shoulders went to the door that led to his own apartments. An hour later, Tikhon came to call Princess Mary to the old prince. He added that Prince Vasily was also there. When Tikhon came to her, Princess Mary was sitting on the sofa in her room, holding the weeping Mademoiselle Bourienne in her arms and gently stroking her hair. The princess' beautiful eyes with all their former calm radiance were looking with tender affection and pity at Mademoiselle Bourienne's pretty face. "No, princess, I have lost your affection forever," said Mademoiselle Bourienne. "Why?" "I love you more than ever," said Princess Mary, "and I will try to do all I can for your happiness. But you despise me. You who are so pure can never understand being so carried away by passion." "Oh, only my poor mother." "I quite understand," answered Princess Mary, with a sad smile. "Calm yourself, my dear. I will go to my father," she said, and went out. Prince Vasily, with one leg thrown high over the other and a snuff-box in his hand, was sitting there with a smile of deep emotion on his face, as if stirred to his heart's core and himself regretting and laughing at his own sensibility, when Princess Mary entered. He hurriedly took a pinch of snuff. "Ah, my dear," he began, rising and taking her by both hands. Then, sighing, he added, "My son's fate is in your hands. Decide, my dear, good, gentle Marie, whom I have always loved as a daughter." He drew back and a real tear appeared in his eye. "Fr. Snorted Prince Bolkonsky. "The prince is making a proposition to you in his pupil's, I mean, his son's, name. Do you wish or not to be Prince Anatole Kurogin's wife? Reply, yes or no," he shouted, "and then I shall reserve the right to state my opinion also." "Yes, my opinion, and only my opinion," added Prince Bolkonsky, turning to Prince Vasily and answering his imploring look. "Yes, or no. My desire is never to leave you, father, never to separate my life from yours." "I don't wish to marry," she answered positively, glancing at Prince Vasily and at her father with her beautiful eyes. "Humbug! Nonsense! Humbug, humbug, humbug," cried Prince Bolkonsky, frowning and taking his daughter's hand. He did not kiss her, but only bending his forehead to hers just touched it, and pressed her hand so that she winced and uttered a cry. Prince Vasily rose. "My dear, I must tell you that this is a moment I shall never, never forget. But, my dear, will you not give us a little hope of touching this heart, so kind and generous? Say, perhaps. The future is so long. Say, perhaps. Prince, what I have said is all there is in my heart. I thank you for the honor, but I shall never be your son's wife." "Well, so that's finished, my dear fellow. I am very glad to have seen you. Very glad. Go back to your rooms, princess." "Go," said the old prince. "Very, very glad to have seen you," repeated he, embracing Prince Vasily. "My vocation is a different one," thought Princess Mary. "My vocation is to be happy with another kind of happiness, the happiness of love and self-sacrifice. And cost what it may, I will arrange poor Amelie's happiness, she loves him so passionately, and so passionately repents. I will do all I can to arrange the match between them. If he is not rich I will give her the means, I will ask my father and Andrew. I shall be so happy when she is his wife. She is so unfortunate, a stranger, alone, helpless. And, oh God, how passionately she must love him if she could so far forget herself. Perhaps I might have done the same," thought Princess Mary. Chapter 6. It was long since the Rostovs had news of Nicholas. Not till midwinter was the Count at last handed a letter addressed in his son's handwriting. On receiving it, he ran on tiptoe to his study in alarm and haste, trying to escape notice, closed the door, and began to read the letter. Anna Mikhailovna, who always knew everything that passed in the house, on hearing of the arrival of the letter went softly into the room and found the Count with it in his hand, sobbing and laughing at the same time. Anna Mikhailovna, though her circumstances had improved, was still living with the Rostovs. "My dear friend," said she, in a tone of pathetic inquiry, prepared to sympathize in any way. The Count sobbed yet more. "Nikolenka, a letter, wounded, my darling boy, the Countess, promoted to be an officer, thank God. How tell the little Countess?" Anna Mikhailovna sat down beside him, with her own handkerchief wiped the tears from his eyes and from the letter, then having dried her own eyes she comforted the Count, and decided that at dinner and till tea-time she would prepare the Countess, and after tea, with God's help, would inform her. At dinner Anna Mikhailovna talked the whole time about the war news and about Nikolenka, twice asked when the last letter had been received from him, though she knew that already, and remarked that they might very likely be getting a letter from him that day. Each time that these hints began to make the Countess anxious and she glanced uneasily at the Count and at Anna Mikhailovna, the latter very adroitly turned the conversation to insignificant matters. Natasha, who, of the whole family, was the most gifted with a capacity to feel any shades of intonation, look, and expression, pricked up her ears from the beginning of the meal and was certain that there was some secret between her father and Anna Mikhailovna, that it had something to do with her brother, and that Anna Mikhailovna was preparing them for it. Bold as she was, Natasha, who knew how sensitive her mother was to anything relating to Nikolenka, did not venture to ask any questions at dinner, but she was too excited to eat anything and kept wriggling about on her chair regardless of her governess' remarks. After dinner, she rushed headlong after Anna Mikhailovna and, dashing at her, flung herself on her neck as soon as she overtook her in the sitting room. "Auntie, darling, do tell me what it is." "Nothing, my dear." "No, dearest, sweet one, honey, I won't give up, I know you know something." Anna Mikhailovna shook her head. "You are a little slyboots," she said. "A letter from Nikolenka." "I'm sure of it," exclaimed Natasha, reading confirmation in Anna Mikhailovna's face. "But for God's sake, be careful, you know how it may affect your mama." I will, only tell me." "You won't?" "Then I will go and tell at once." Anna Mikhailovna, in a few words, told her the contents of the letter, on condition that she should tell no one. "No, on my true word of honor," said Natasha, crossing herself, "I won't tell anyone," and she ran off at once to Sonia. "Nikolenka, wounded, a letter," she announced in gleeful triumph. "Nicholas," was all Sonia said, instantly turning white. Natasha, seeing the impression the news of her brother's wound produced on Sonia, felt for the first time the sorrowful side of the news. She rushed to Sonia, hugged her, and began to cry. "A little wound, but he has been made an officer, he is well now, he wrote himself," said she through her tears. "There now. It's true that all you women are crybabies," remarked Petya, pacing the room with large, resolute strides. "Now I'm very glad indeed, that my brother has distinguished himself so. You are all blubberers and understand nothing." Natasha smiled through her tears. "You haven't read the letter?" asked Sonia. "No, but she said that it was all over and that he's now an officer." "Thank God," said Sonia, crossing herself. "But perhaps she deceived you. Let us go to Mama." Petya paced the room in silence for a time. "If I'd been in Nikolenka's place I would have killed even more of those Frenchmen," he said. "What nasty brutes they are. I'd have killed so many that there'd have been a heap of them." "Hold your tongue, Petya, what a goose you are." "I'm not a goose, but they are who cry about trifles," said Petya. "Do you remember him?" Natasha suddenly asked, after a moment's silence. Sonia smiled. "Do I remember Nicholas?" "No, Sonia, but do you remember so that you remember him perfectly, remember everything?" said Natasha, with an expressive gesture, evidently wishing to give her words a very definite meaning. "I remember Nikolenka too, I remember him well," she said. "But I don't remember Boris. I don't remember him a bit." "What? You don't remember Boris?" asked Sonia in surprise. "It's not that I don't remember, I know what he is like, but not as I remember Nikolenka. Him, I just shut my eyes and remember, but Boris. No." She shut her eyes. "No. There's nothing at all." "Oh, Natasha," said Sonia, looking ecstatically and earnestly at her friend as if she did not consider her worthy to hear what she meant to say and as if she were saying it to someone else, with whom joking was out of the question, "I am in love with your brother once for all and, whatever may happen to him or to me, shall never cease to love him as long as I live." Natasha looked at Sonia with wondering and inquisitive eyes, and said nothing. She felt that Sonia was speaking the truth, that there was such love as Sonia was speaking of. But Natasha had not yet felt anything like it. She believed it could be, but did not understand it. "Shall you write to him?" she asked. Sonia became thoughtful. The question of how to write to Nicholas, and whether she ought to write, tormented her. Now that he was already an officer and a wounded hero, would it be right to remind him of herself and, as it might seem, of the obligations to her he had taken on himself? "I don't know. I think if he writes, I will write too," she said, blushing. "And you won't feel ashamed to write to him?" Sonia smiled. No. And I should be ashamed to write to Boris. I'm not going to. Why should you be ashamed? Well, I don't know. It's awkward and would make me ashamed. And I know why she'd be ashamed, said Petya, offended by Natasha's previous remark. It's because she was in love with that fat one in spectacles, that was how Petya described his namesake, the new Count Bezukov, and now she's in love with that singer, he meant Natasha's Italian singing master, that's why she's ashamed. Petya, you're stupid, said Natasha. Not more stupid than you, madam, said the 9-year-old Petya, with the air of an old brigadier. The countess had been prepared by Anna Mikhailovna's hints at dinner. On retiring to her own room, she sat in an armchair, her eyes fixed on a miniature portrait of her son on the lid of a snuff-box, while the tears kept coming into her eyes. Anna Mikhailovna, with the letter, came on tiptoe to the countess' door and paused. Don't come in, she said to the old count who was following her. Come later. And she went in, closing the door behind her. The count put his ear to the keyhole and listened. At first he heard the sound of indifferent voices, then Anna Mikhailovna's voice alone in a long speech, then a cry, then silence, then both voices together with glad intonations, and then footsteps. Anna Mikhailovna opened the door. Her face wore the proud expression of a surgeon who has just performed a difficult operation and admits the public to appreciate his skill. It is done, she said to the count, pointing triumphantly to the countess, who sat holding in one hand the snuff-box with its portrait and in the other the letter, and pressing them alternately to her lips. When she saw the count, she stretched out her arms to him, embraced his bald head, over which she again looked at the letter and the portrait, and in order to press them again to her lips, she slightly pushed away the bald head. Vera, Natasha, Sonia, and Petya now entered the room, and the reading of the letter began. After a brief description of the campaign and the 2 battles in which he had taken part, and his promotion, Nicholas said that he kissed his father's and mother's hands asking for their blessing, and that he kissed Vera, Natasha, and Petya. Besides that, he sent greetings to Monsieur Schelling, Madame Schoss, and his old nurse, and asked them to kiss for him dear Sonia, whom he loved and thought of just the same as ever. When she heard this Sonia blushed so that tears came into her eyes and, unable to bear the looks turned upon her, ran away into the dancing hall, whirled round it at full speed with her dress puffed out like a balloon, and, flushed and smiling, plumped down on the floor. The countess was crying. "Why are you crying, mamma?" asked Vera. "From all he says one should be glad and not cry." This was quite true, but the count, the countess, and Natasha looked at her reproachfully. And who is it she takes after, thought the countess. Nicholas' letter was read over hundreds of times, and those who were considered worthy to hear it had to come to the countess, for she did not let it out of her hands. The tutors came, and the nurses, and Dmitri, and several acquaintances, and the countess reread the letter each time with fresh pleasure and each time discovered in it fresh proofs of Nikolenka's virtues. How strange, how extraordinary, how joyful it seemed, that her son, the scarcely perceptible motion of whose tiny limbs she had felt 20 years ago within her, that son about whom she used to have quarrels with the too indulgent count, that son who had first learned to say, "Père," and then, "Granny," that this son should now be away in a foreign land amid strange surroundings, a manly warrior doing some kind of man's work of his own, without help or guidance. The universal experience of ages, showing that children do grow imperceptibly from the cradle to manhood, did not exist for the countess. Her son's growth toward manhood, at each of its stages, had seemed as extraordinary to her as if there had never existed the millions of human beings who grew up in the same way. As 20 years before, it seemed impossible that the little creature who lived somewhere under her heart would ever cry, suck her breast, and begin to speak, so now she could not believe that that little creature could be this strong, brave man, this model son and officer that, judging by this letter, he now was. "What a style! How charmingly he describes," said she, reading the descriptive part of the letter. "And what a soul! Not a word about himself. Not a word. About some Denisov or other, though he himself, I dare say, is braver than any of them. He says nothing about his sufferings. What a heart! How like him it is. And how he has remembered everybody. Not forgetting anyone. I always said when he was only so high, I always said. For more than a week preparations were being made, rough drafts of letters to Nicholas from all the household were written and copied out, while under the supervision of the Countess and the solicitude of the Count, money and all things necessary for the uniform and equipment of the newly commissioned officer were collected. Anna Mikhailovna, practical woman that she was, had even managed by favor with army authorities to secure advantageous means of communication for herself and her son. She had opportunities of sending her letters to the Grand Duke Konstantin Pavlovich, who commanded the Guards. The Rostovs supposed that the Russian Guards, abroad, was quite a definite address, and that if a letter reached the Grand Duke in command of the Guards there was no reason why it should not reach the Pavlograd regiment, which was presumably somewhere in the same neighborhood. And so it was decided to send the letters and money by the Grand Duke's courier to Boris, and Boris was to forward them to Nicholas. The letters were from the old Count, the Countess, Petya, Vera, Natasha, and Sonia, and finally there were 6,000 rubles for his outfit and various other things the old Count sent to his son.